Aloha Friday, everybody. Thank you for being with me tonight. I am so excited about what we're going to be discussing tonight, which is healing, leadership and healing. And don't think that just because you're a leader, you don't have to go down this road. Cynthia, thank you so much for being with me tonight and sharing this. Um, I see in the background, folks on LinkedIn, there's an issue on LinkedIn, but you still can see this on Twitter and YouTube, and I'll try to fix that while Cynthia talks in the background. But folks, healing is so important right now. There's so much going on. There has been so much going on. So many family members have left us during these last 2 years, and we just have to find ways of getting better. So, Cynthia, once again, thank you for being with me. Take a little moment and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you for having me. So I'm so grateful to be here. My name is Cynthia Omekam, aka Coach Sin, and I am the owner of Holistic Liberation LLC, where I serve my clients as a certified holistic life coach and spiritual healer. So my focus is around healing the mind, body, and spirit through a mixture of psychology, coaching tools, and spiritual tools that I have acquired over just through my experience as well as through my education. It's all about helping my clients get through those stressful moments, those moments of overwhelm, so that they can continue to thrive and rise no matter what it is that they may face.
Outstanding. I'll tell you, folks, when we talk about healing, when we talk about how to get better in any circumstances in our life, we're always wondering, how do we do that? Now, how did you get into this whole realm of healing and getting better?
So I started off in the field of psychology. I can even go further beyond that. So I was raised in a very spiritually based household. My mom used old remedies, spiritual approaches to everything from, day-to-day stressors to behavioral issues to emotional concerns, as well as, healing situations. So I learned a lot from her, from observation, from stories, from all those things that she, were passed down from generation to generation. But outside of that aspect, I started my education in the field of psychology. So I have a bachelor's in psychology, and then I have a master's in forensic psychology. And of course, my whole vision was to kind of follow that track and start my own practice and become this like top psychologist and definitely exploring the realm of the forensic population. However, in 2016, when I graduated with my master's, well, right before I graduated, I found out that my mom had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. So that was the end all be all for me. I dropped everything, any kind of mindset that I had developed up until then was definitely depleted. It was a rebirth, even though I saw it and felt it as a death, right? And so, I completely stripped myself of the identity that I had held on to and created up until that point. And I took on the position as my mom's full-time caregiver. And it was during that time that I was able to really reconnect with my inner self, my higher self, my inner knowing. And, spiritual growth took place, transformation took place. I healed through things that I didn't even know that I needed to heal through. I gained compassion in areas that I didn't know that I needed to gain compassion in. And, even though it was all aimed at the health and the vitality of my mom, at the same time, in a parallel universe, I was also healing and preparing myself. And towards the end of her time, even though at the time we didn't know it was the end of her time, I presented her with this notebook that I created. And I had all these notes, from the name of my business to the logo to just every detail down to the core. And when I presented it to her, she looked at me and she was just telling me how proud she was. And I'll never forget that moment, because in that moment, it felt significant, but I still blew it off as like, she's just a mom, she's encouraging me, she's giving me, she's pouring into me like she always has. However, after losing her and going through the grief process and, really navigating that time and having to essentially rebuild who I was and explore and discover a new identity that was already instilled in me, but I was not yet connected to. I really realized that, at a time where I felt like I had lost everything and I had nothing. I mean, my faith was gone, my money financially was gone, my vision, my plans, everything that I worked for, I felt like was just kind of at a standstill. But then I returned back to that notebook and I saw those plans and I saw the detail of them. And I realized that they were essentially a roadmap, right, for me to push forward and to give me a direction forward, but also to keep me anchored. Because it's through that hope and that optimism that came through that messaging that allowed me to really stand strong and stand tall, even through the hardest times. Because as we know, grieving over a family member or a parent or anybody who is that close to you, and me and my mom were aces, that was my best friend. It's not something that you just grieve through in a year or you get over in a couple of months, or you go through therapy and it's all good and well. It is something that sticks with you for a lifetime. So understanding that this grieving process would be continual, but also understanding that I could still have full life. I could still live fully and freely despite these things that I have to heal through. And because of that, it gave me the motivation to not only stick with what I was given as my next steps, but to follow through with it and to give it my all. And with in all of it, I am extremely grateful because as I continue to make an impact and help others on their healing journey, I tell my clients all the time, they continue to help me heal on my journey. And I am really amazed at how beneficial something can be when it's all aimed at service, right? I feel like everything that was given to me was about serving the people. And not once did I consider that that service would turn and reflect inward towards myself and turn into a own service for my own journey.
Yeah, it's just wonderful to know that in the process of giving, in the process of trying to help others, you end up helping yourself. And that it's just the way God designed it, so that one cup pours into the other. And I've seen these little uh things at events, and you're wondering how in the world all this water jumps into another cup, then into a basin, right? You got to
Yeah,
have your anchor, you got to have your basin, and it continues to flow, and you can even add another cup, and it starts in that process. So I'm so happy to hear that you were able to share that vision with your mom,
yeah,
and get her blessing, because that's really what she did. She blessed your journey ahead from that moment, and look what has come of it, right? Just we're talking tonight about this healing process, and folks, a lot of folks know that this year has been it's not just been this year, the last 2 years have been very chaotic for a lot of people. They've suffered a lot of loss, and some have not been able to get past. I remember back in April when I lost my mom, I had just gotten hired. I had to leave that job because it was just overwhelming. I did not calculate, and there's no way you can calculate this, right?
right.
How much it was going to impact me and my ability to just simply think, right? And it was tough, so I had to make a decision there, that was in the favor of actually both of us. The company, just being right and saying, hey, I'm not giving you 100%, you shouldn't be paying me 100%, and I need this time, and I can't tell you how long it is, and at the same time, I'm going through this, and thankfully, my company was amicable and said, you know what, great, that's fine. We hope you get well, and this and that and the other. On the flip side, my brother didn't even get no days to to have as a way of being able to go and take care of stuff. So the world is set up different in
Hmm.
many different ways. But I'm so happy to hear that you were able to get that. And you know, you said this grieving doesn't stop, and it truly doesn't. So how do I get at let's say a person does get to this point, how do I get to understand that without, because it's a journey.
It's definitely a journey. I really, of course, my first go to, and I feel like people get so shocked, and I don't understand why. I guess because I'm a coach, but even as a healer, therapy is still my number one suggestion when it comes to grief, when it comes to anything that's dealing with mental health. And of course, there are alternatives if you're not necessarily sold on the concept of therapy, but I definitely encourage therapy. I did therapy for about 3 months um, after losing my mom. And I feel like it was therapy that allowed me to create that space that was necessary for me to hold space for the surrendering that was necessary to come to a place of peace. And I can
Hmm.
break that down a little bit more. So, um, in order to understand and to accept that this that you're going through is not going to be over tomorrow or the next day or a year from now, and that the feeling that you felt that very first time you heard those words and you got that message, or you were told about the situation, can return 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. It really does take hearing it from somebody who is knowledgeable, who has experienced it. So I did a lot of group therapy as well. A lot of community healing was necessary for me. And just holding that compassion for myself and understanding that the grief process looks different for everybody. And, just because, my friend who lost their parent 2 years ago is back on track and completely, feels some type of relief and just completely disconnected from it, doesn't mean that that is my journey or that is my path, and that is okay. Understanding that grief doesn't necessarily mean that everything else has to stop, but it's more so learning how to navigate those moments and understanding that the more that you learn how to appropriately navigate these moments, the more you build that resilience and that inner strength, and you gain those tools to have in your mental toolbox. So as you move forward and you grieve, even though the grief is from the same source, the strength or the energy behind it is depleted. And the more that you continue to push forward, the more that you continue to show up in compassion and love for yourself, for the situation, and you work through those things like forgiveness and working through any shame or regrets, you really do move into this space where you are able to see through clearer, like a clearer sight. Like you mentioned, when you were thinking about starting this new job, you couldn't even think after, finding out about your mom. It's true for everybody. Everything changes at that moment, and you cannot see yourself as the same person that you were a second ago. You have to meet yourself where you are at that time and understand and be able to be self aware enough to know and honor whatever it is that you need. So, for example, with you, and I honor you and I respect you for, speaking up and standing firm, because that was a bold move, but yet it was necessary. And understanding that you would not be able to show up at your fullest potential, and allowing yourself the space to say that's okay. By giving your job that heads up, you were giving yourself the okay to be where you were. So the weight of, I have to show up, I have to put on face, all these things that society kind of has us feeling, it gets washed away, which allows you to thrive and flourish and heal, more sufficiently at that time.
Yeah. you know Folks, if we're talking about grief here, right? It's just something that Cynthia and I have in common right now. um but this is, if you're a leader out there, and you're wondering, hey, what does this have to do with me? I didn't suffer no loss. I didn't go through it. Don't worry. As humans, we'll all get there one day, right? We will all get there one day. But this is more important to you as a leader, because you have people the chances are that if you have a team, at least one person in that team has suffered loss in the last couple of years. And so, as a leader, you have to be present and know how to be a participant in this healing process, right? Because even leaders at job sites have a responsibility in maybe not the fullness of the healing process, but something, right? Because let's say, hey, the person needs to come in later, you know, or the person needs some days off, or let's say your company doesn't provide some bereavement period, for you to stand up as a leader and say, you know what, something's wrong here,
Yes.
and so if you're a leader and you're listening, healing's down your alley, don't worry. You'll need it here sooner or later. Um so Cynthia, we're talking about leadership, and what are some areas in leadership that you have noticed that maybe they need to beef up on or be a little more sensitive about in terms of healing and healing for our people?
Definitely that compassion piece. Like you mentioned, you may not have experience the same thing. You may not be able to emotionally connect to what somebody else may be going through, but just having that certain level of respect and compassion for the reality that that person is experiencing is super important. And I hear a lot of things in common with what you said about your brother and not being given that time to grieve and not being, being honored with that space to do whatever it is that they need to do to get through that moment. And I think it's really important for leaders to understand that, yes, as a leader, you need to keep everything running, you need to keep everything in order. I know you carry a lot of weight, but at the same time, the well-being and the state of your team is super important. It's almost inevitable to lead anything without the people, right? So if you're not taking care of the people, then what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're doing? And I think that we need to take time to understand that the level of grief that people are experiencing right now is not equivalent to the normal grief that we are used to discussing. Because as you mentioned, the grief that people are experiencing now, there are so many differences compared to the grief that I went through, which was in 2018, just literally 2 years prior to everything with COVID. Now you have people who aren't able to, say goodbye. You have people who are not able to, spend time with their loved ones before something happens. Not only did they not anticipate it, but we're just all kind of trying to run this race, trying to get back on track, trying to keep things in order. And so you aren't being faced with people who were given time to in a sense prepare for this moment. You are working with people who were hit with this big huge boulder, and they're trying to get from underneath it while keeping everything else in order. So this is not the normal level of compassion that we are used to providing. It's deeper than that. It's really rooted in love and some sort of divine connection. I never push spirituality on anybody, but I definitely think that we all need some source to be connected to, something greater, something bigger, something supernatural that's not be able to be explained here on earth, to kind of give us that optimism and give us that vision so that we can see people through a different perspective. And I think if we anchor everything in love, it'll be a little bit more easy to find that empathy, to have that concern and consideration, to create that space and understanding that it's okay to delegate that, right? We always talk about delegating, and in leadership that's super important, but understanding that healing is a place to delegate as well. There are plenty of professionals who can work beside you or within your company to provide that space for your team. Maybe that's something that you're not capable of providing, which I completely understand and I respect, and I think it's really important for us to be able to be aware of that, our capacity, our emotional capacity, our spiritual capacity, our mental capacity, in order to handle these type of situations. Because as a leader, you may be overwhelmed with your own things that you really can't tap into these things, and that is absolutely okay. So, just understanding that the need is there. It's more so finding the right way for you and your team so that everybody comes out, and their well-being is being considered and taken care of appropriately.
Absolutely wonderful advice there for leaders. I hope that everybody that's listening, and hey, by the way, if you are joining us on LinkedIn, it looks like they fixed that feed problem there. If you are joining us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or on Twitter, please let us know. Somebody already, I want to put this on here. Somebody already said amen to that. So I said the same thing. Um, you know, it's interesting, and I've talked about leadership and faith before on the podcast, developing the leader within, and have a future uh, podcast for faith again. You talked about a foundation. You talked about an anchor early on, right? And sometimes that's a person, somebody that's strong. We look towards them, we admire them, we give them that due respect as being somebody that we see unshakable, unmovable. uh,
Mhm,
and sometimes at the time that we lose them, sometimes that also goes away, right?
mhm.
But you're talking about a type of anchor that is untouched by human effects, right? By
Yeah,
earthly bounds.
yes,
And I found that in my toughest of moments, both personally and as a leader, having that type of foundation, having that type of anchor, has been almost, well, it has been a lifesaver.
yes, yes,
Because there's a lot of things that can go on in our lives, and you would think, oh, I would never think that, well, I would never think this. Well, you'd be surprised
yes.
at what kind of things show up in your life, and then you're thinking some kind of way.
Mhm.
And I tell you, if it were not for that divine and heavenly type of anchor, I would have probably done some things, or even said some things, taken some actions that were not even conducive to my benefit.
Yeah,
And so I really agree with you that folks should have that type of place to run to, right? That one to run to in times of trouble. Um, what are the current things that you hear now? We've been in this state of alert for 2 years straight. Talk about anxiety and stress and all kinds of feelings, on top of the day-to-day life type of feelings that we go through. What have been some of the most recurring things come up, and people needing healing about?
that's a really good question. I would definitely say, um, just that fear of the unknown, mixed with a little bit of letting go control. So surrendering. And so I guess that goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. So having that fear of the unknown, right? Because, when 2020 hit, I'm sure we all were on the same kind of page where it's like, okay, another year, new me, this is what I'm going to do. And 2 months in, 3 months in, all of that was shattered. And we were all put into this state where we really had no control. And for so many people, not having control means chaos. For so many people, not having control, really does just take the whole vision away from them. They see nothing. There is this lack of connectivity to, their purpose, to their path, to the possibilities. And so I've done a lot of work over these last 2 years, just helping people to understand that, you know, even though we were forced to see it through this way, we were always in the midst of the unknown. Nobody can predict the future. Now, do we have some people out there with special gifts that can give us insights? Yes, of course. But I'm talking about us as a collective. Every second is the unknown. As I'm talking, what's coming next is the unknown. So trying to wrap our mind around the simplicity of the unknown to understand and kind of dive and explore the fear amongst that. And when I did, that's what led me to that letting go control. It really connects back to not having control and being built in a society where control is key, right? Control is success. If I can manipulate this, if I can make sure this goes my way, then everything will be good. And within the last 2 years, we've had to completely let go of that. We've really had to step into this place where we have to trust not only ourselves, but the universe, but the higher power. And we have to understand that even with the best plans, and I'm sure everybody understood that over the last 2 years, anything can happen and completely throw us off track. But it's important for us to stand our ground and to remain anchored and hold our power and own that power. So no matter what, we're able to continue to push forward, understanding that that flexibility is necessary to be there. That hope is necessary to be there, that optimism, but understanding that no matter what, everything in your life is always leading you in the same direction, which is your destiny. So no matter how many different routes you take, you're always headed in the right direction. So now it's more so taking back control by taking back control of your peace, your present moment, your experience through it all. And so, of course, it's coming out a little bit easier said than done. But that has been the focus with many of my clients, maybe on different levels and with different situations. But all in all, it really does go back to them reclaiming their power, their time, and their peace through surrendering and understanding that, you can only take care of what you can take care of, and everything else will work its way out, and being at peace with that so that you can still live freely and still live fully through it all.
Yeah, I love that. And fear is one of those things that, wow, very powerful if you allow it. Right now,
Hmm.
it will present itself. It has no problem crashing a party.
For sure.
Right, it has no problem. Your knowledge and your um, the way you see things and the way that uh, we talk about surrender. It's another thing, right? And the funny thing is, fear comes at us. Surrender is from us. We we give surrender more power than we have, and we try to hold on to some things.
Hmm.
Not so long ago, I had made a post. Is that what are you holding on to that's bringing you down? Because
Hmm.
hey, you think it's all right, but it's not. And so in I can understand, given the last 2 years, the fear of the unknown is, it was a thing before, but
Yeah,
this is like on a whole different level. When you're watching the whole world crumble almost, at daily, and wow, I mean, we're headed that way
I
again
know.
with another thing, a variant, and nobody knows. Nobody
Right.
knows. So, I'm watching gas prices skyrocket. I can't buy a gallon of milk for less than $5. Something's wrong.
Something's
Right?
wrong.
Something's wrong. Um,
Hmm.
so fear and leaders out there that you're listening, right? We're talking about different things in terms of personal healing. We did mention a dynamic uh, place where multiple people may need healing. You if you have teams, but in this, it'd be a good time to check the temperature of your teams, to check to see, you know what are they afraid of. Have you ever asked your team, in a personal way, hey, I'm just interested, what what really is something that you're afraid of, and try to help in that area. You know, a lot of people think that because you work in a setting, in a corporate setting, or in a setting um yeah, like, just organizations, that you can't ask that question. You'd be surprised how many of team members would just give a sigh of relief that somebody cares, that somebody cares what they're afraid of. And maybe you can't do anything, but just the fact that you expressed an interest in something outside of work, it's that's a healing process in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let you comment that on that a little bit.
No, I'm with you. I'm just like, yes, because in that moment, I feel like I put myself in that place, and all I felt was like, finally being seen, being cared about. Like it's bigger than the role that I, serve here. It's bigger than whatever it is that I pour into this company, and to receive that during this time, out of all, I mean, I feel like it could be respected, and it's definitely a moment of gratitude, whether we were here in this moment or 5 years ago. But right now, in this time when it seems like everybody is kind of within their own bubble, just trying to survive, to know that somebody else really cares and really um is concerned with your most vulnerable space, or to allow you to create space for vulnerability in itself, in this professional area. I think it just really does speak more so to the heart and the spirit than the mind, and I think that when you're working with other people, we kind of stay up in our heads, right? Like, I mean, it's business, right? Like, it is business. That's what we're supposed to be. However, I always believe, as a leader, there's nothing wrong with being a heartfelt leader. And you just bridge that gap with that one statement. By asking that one question, by inquiring about that one thing, you bridge that gap. And I think that opens up space for so many other abundant possibilities, not only for the organization within itself, but for the community aspects of the team, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I love throwing stuff out like that because you just don't you we cannot calculate how far that comment like that would go.
Yes.
You know, this person that's working for you all this time, this whole day, has things going on at home,
Hmm.
and you just added another resource. You just added something else. You know, I kid around a lot with with my with my slogan, for my company, but it's meant to be kind of comical, but it's serious because it's really kind of like the state of leadership as it is. And my slogan is, I take you from success to success, right?
Yes.
I talk about K factors. I talk about things that are out of place in your success and messing things up, right?
Yes.
And some people's like, oh man, you suck. Oh, I don't know about that, but you got to be honest. There's a lot of people out there that are saying, man, this person sucks. This person sucks. But
Hmm.
but all of that aside, the reality is that there's a lot of people in positions of authorities that are not able to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
They're not, because you mentioned it, right? They're just in their head. They're just in what they do. Um, you know, they're not as happy as you want to be anyway. So
Right.
some leaders you don't want to go to.
Right.
And I hope they don't come over here trying to give me some. So those situations are occurring, and they happen all the time. But but for those that can understand that a time of healing can be initiated by your words. You don't have to. Now, let's say you can't go all the way and bring them to a point of healing, right? That may not be your
Right.
forte. That's
Right.
why we got Coach Sin talking to us, right? You could send them to her, and she can finish that.
Hmm.
But all things that leaders participate in have a very heavy consequence, both on the good and the bad.
Yes.
And so in terms of healing, you could have a role, and the question is, as a leader, are you playing that role?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to play a role that ain't yours. That's always going to
Mm-hmm.
be catastrophic. But for the ones that you do and you can, a simple word of encouragement, a simple word of, maybe you're going through and say, look, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I got some stuff that I'm afraid of. So I just thought I asked you if you're good. Hey, tell me what you're doing to get you to feel that good. But it just shows that you're a human, right? It
Mm-hmm.
shows that we're not in this by ourselves, and they can actually um, depend on us as leaders.
Yes.
Um, we're headed into this end of the year, right? People are soon forgetting what's going on the outside because they're thinking, hey, we just got Thanksgiving. Hey, we're coming on Christmas. There's a lot of people trying to force what would have been normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we really don't know how this new variant is going to impact, holidays, travel. There's some people, there's things looking like they're going backwards now. With this thing, normal is not normal anymore. That's just my feeling.
I'm with
I,
you.
you know, what you thought it was, but it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
It is not now. So how can I get um in a position where I can be in the now, and and feel safe around that, because there are so many uncertainties today.
Definitely, definitely a lot of inner work. If you are focused on anything outside of each step forward, definitely trying to make peace with whatever vision you had. It's not almost, it is, it's a grief, it's a
Yeah.
grieving period, right? We have to grieve, and a lot of us, I don't think that a lot of us allowed ourselves to do that because we were holding on to returning to normal, but we have to grieve with what we once knew as normal. Holidays, gatherings, outings, concerts, eating out, public transportation, just so many things that once seemed so simplistic and just kind of a normal day to day kind of experience has been shifted. And we may not ever return back to that place. And even if we do, it's still going to be different because it's not the past. The past is gone. The future is out of our hands. All that we have now is the present moment. And I always tell people to, try their best to practice mindful living in an effort to incorporate that and transform that into a lifestyle. Because, trying to refocus yourself in this moment to be present, and you don't do that from on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to be successful. You're going to be bombarded about stressors about the future, burdens from the past. It's inevitable, right? But if you start to make mindful living a part of your day-to-day, you can slowly start to allow yourself to be more present and to be anchored in the present, because you will start to understand the value and the power that you truly hold in the present. Meditation is really good. Conscious breathing is really good. Journaling is really good. And really anchoring yourself in gratitude. We talk about the power of gratitude and we connect it to abundance, but we don't necessarily connect it to the healing aspect and being grateful for where you are. No matter what happens in the future, no matter what you've been through the past, can take your mind and put your mind and your spirit and your heart in alignment in a way that will allow you to stir up that hope and stir up that optimism, because that's what is going to be on our journey moving forward. It's going to be a lot of continuation of just tapping in and empowering ourselves and reminding ourselves and anchoring ourselves. And it's going to be a day-to-day thing. It's not going to be one of those, like, red pill or blue pill kind of situation. It's definitely a day-to-day nurturing that we need to take place, not only within ourselves, but within our household, because culture is everything. So making sure that your household and everything that surrounds you is on the same frequency, and allow yourself to be present, and don't beat yourself up for wanting to be present, because that's a big hiccup that a lot of my corporate clients have had, right? Just not feeling like they have the opportunity to be present because they're always planning for the future. It's always about the next thing. Well, I challenge you to reel that back in and understand that if we've seen what we've seen in the last 2 years, and we understand that anything can happen and nothing is in our control, what are you really planning for if you're not right here right now? Your energy, your intention, your thoughts, everything needs to be anchored in the present, and understanding that not only is that necessary for progress forward, but also for fulfillment. You deserve to be fulfilled on this journey. Pleasure is what we were sent here for. Work is just kind of the thing that comes along with it. You work hard, you play harder, that kind of concept. But understanding that, it's okay to be present, to complete your task for today, and enjoy the rest of your time. You don't have to hop into the next task or go into tomorrow's task. Just stay here right now. And I promise you, it won't be the icing on the cake for you if you are hit with something, tragic during this time. But you will find a moment where you can be grateful for that time that you really took hold of, and you really it allowed yourself the time to immerse yourself in the one thing that we have, and the one power that we truly have, which is time and energy, right? Energy and time are the top tier things of wealth, if you ask me. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're depleting that and you're allowing society to strip that from you based off of narratives that you have from the past, I'm giving you that wake up call. Still be professional, still be a go getter, still be focused. But it is time for us to realize that this is not what we were here to do. We were here to flourish and thrive and enjoy ourselves and pour into others, because the more we enjoy our lives, whether you do it intentionally or not,
Mm-hmm.
trust me, you're pouring into that other cup, that whole waterfall technique that you talked about. So, definitely just trying that mindfulness, any kind of mindful techniques, as well as tapping into some kind of healing, whether that's through therapy, working with a coach or a healer, or doing it yourself. Because remember, you are the healer at the end of the day. It's all about tapping within, but just understanding that the future is what it is, the past is what it is, but the now is where you are. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and for leaders, if you're listening, you know, being present is the present. That's where you give your teams, your colleagues, the best gift, being
Yes.
there. You know, and I think about times that my wife would come to me, and I would have my phone in my hand. I'm finishing off something. And she's like, "Hey, yeah," and she doesn't realize and I'm like, you know, yeah, something's got to give, right? But guess
Mhm.
what? If I stay on that phone, she's not gonna feel too appreciated. Whether
Mhm.
she barged in the middle of my flow here, it doesn't matter. She's not
Right.
gonna feel appreciated. So best thing to me to do is put that thing down. It's all like put it down, okay, you
Yes.
know, and give her what she needs, which is my attention. For folks in your jobs, you know, the present and what you can do there is the most important thing, because you will miss a lot of the things your people need when you're not. If you're too
Mhm.
busy trying to fix stuff, you may miss the true, thing that needs to be fixed.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just we're in a chaotic, busy environment, and everybody has them from time to time. But as a leader, you need to be conscious that your folks might need you to be present and provide that avenue for them to be able to flourish, and guess what, they will pour into you, and they do almost every day because they're working supporting your
Okay.
direction, right? They so maybe it's time to flip that switch and turn it back the other way. uh Cynthia, this has been such a great conversation.
Yes.
I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, some of the things that folks can be doing, and leadership or not leadership. This is all good, because eventually you may be a leader, if you're not. And if you can get there knowing all this,
Yes.
whoo, somebody's gonna be happy.
Yeah.
And so how would someone reach out to you and that may need this or may need you as a resource for their people? How can they do that?
Yeah, so you can reach me on LinkedIn at Cynthia Omekam, or even Holistic Liberation. I have my own business page as well. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Holistic Liberation. Instagram is going to be holistic underscore liberation. Facebook is just Holistic Liberation all together, one word. And you can always reach out to me through my website, holisticliberation.com, where you can find all kinds of resources, contact me directly, as well as shoot me an email at cynthiao2008 at gmail.com.
Outstanding. Well, folks, I could just say let the healing begin.
Yes.
That's wishful thinking. It has to start with you, and hopefully, if it's something that you, the listener, is going through, reach out to Coach Sin. She can get you in the right direction. Healing does start with us. Everything starts with us. Leadership starts with you. And the more you get in tune with what the needs that you have and fulfill those and get those filled out and done, the easier it'll be to get somebody else there as well. So, Cynthia, thank you so much once again. Uh, Folks, if you need healing, I say, as a faith man, you need to pray, go to God. A second on earth, go to Coach Sin. She's gonna help you out if you can't make that connection. And I wish everybody a great week coming up, week coming up. We'll see each other next Friday, Aloha Friday Live. And if you have any questions or any needs to contact, I'll make sure to have all of Coach Sin's info in the post. So for those of you watching this as a replay, I'm glad you did. Put some comments in there and let us know what you thought of the show. Until next week, aloha, everybody.